Hi BookTube, it's Amy. This is my Friday Reads filmed on a Friday morning. And I've only got 2 books on the go that I picked up this week. One of them is The Magician by W. Somerset Maugham, and I'm reading this as a buddy read. I'm not too far into it yet, just about a chapter or so. I have to say I'm intrigued so far. We have 2 doctors, the younger one being Arthur, and he is just traveled to Paris to meet with his fiancée, who, I don't know, it's kind of one of those odd, creepy relationships where her parents died and he became her guardian when she was 10 and then proposed to her at the age of 17. And she found out that her father was broke and Arthur has been paying for everything for her out of his own money all these years. And she's half in love with him and half feels obligated to him. But he sent her off to art school in Paris for 2 years, which is what she had wanted to do before their marriage. And they are now reuniting, and it is suggested that the marriage is going to happen sometime in the near future. But you also have this odd figure that has appeared in several scenes past in the street, this man by the name of Oliver, who Arthur's friend tells him is a magician, or claims to be a magician. His friend met Oliver while studying in the library. And there's this odd scene where they're in a restaurant and a cafe at night, and Oliver shows up and sort of all the French locals clear out, just leaving the foreigners behind. And it's this odd scene. He obviously has quite an effect on people. But we'll see what happens here. Reading the introduction, I did read some allegations that Mom had plagiarized certain parts of the book. Apparently there are passages in here about the occult that are direct paraphrases of sentences and paragraphs from books on the occult that Mom would have done his research from. And so I would assume that that was probably a slip on his part. I doubt he would have intentionally plagiarized from those books, but one of his critics did point out that plagiarism, because he was quite upset at a character in this book who he felt was a portrayal of himself. But I am reading that. And then I'm also reading on my phone through the NetGalley app Peter Mansbridge's new book titled Extraordinary Canadians, that is coming out, I think, the end of this month or October sometimes. I forget the date. It's sometime this fall, but I was quite pleased to get my hands on that. Peter Mansbridge is, of course, the former CBC news anchor and host of The National. For years, if you were tuning into any major news event or to New Year's or Canada Day celebrations, there was a good chance you were going to have Peter Mansbridge behind that news desk. And he was almost an institution in and of itself, rather. But I was quite intrigued by this new book, Extraordinary Canadians, because it is a series of profiles of everyday Canadians. So these are sort of everyday people you most likely wouldn't have heard of. And so far I read one about a man who was in a car accident, who went on to become a musician, and then to sort of become I forget exactly what you would call it, what phrase you would use. Basically, he goes around to schools and plays his music and gives promotional, motivational talks to prevent suicide, which I thought was quite interesting. And then there's another story in there about a female engineer who arrived from Iran to study at McGill University in the 80s, ended up studying at Concordia, and ended up being one of Canada's first female engineers to own her own company, and so that was quite interesting. And she later went on to lecture as well and to have an engineering school named after her, which I thought was quite interesting. And there's several others I've read as well. I will talk more about it later on, but what's also interesting about it is that Peter Mansbridge has written these stories, each chapter, from the perspective of the person he's writing about. And so you have it in that first person, which I think makes it more personal and impactful. And I'm enjoying the book so far. So those are the two things I have on the go. I did read a couple of entries from Dorothy Wordsworth's journals. Won't really mention that. Maybe I'll just stop mentioning Dorothy Wordsworth altogether, because I do read those on an ongoing basis every week. But I was a little bit distracted earlier in the week. I did just do, recent reads on Sunday because of my trip last week, but I was distracted earlier on in the week because, first of all, Tuesday night, I don't read on Tuesday nights because that is my social night. I head over to my friend's place a few blocks from here and we watch a movie. But Wednesday night was the Academy of Country Music Awards, and I spent several hours trying to figure out how to watch that. Unfortunately, in Canada, if you don't have a cable package, there's really no way to do it. I downloaded this CBS All Access app. It does air on CBS, but even though they have a Canadian version of that app, it wouldn't allow me to watch the live TV channels, and it also wouldn't allow me to watch the ACMs after the fact. But essentially what I did was I went on Twitter and I scrolled through the hashtags to see, how were the performances? Was anyone posting little clips of their television sets? Who is winning the awards? Because I'm a huge country music fan, and it was, I'm sort of used to doing that. I've done that many years now with the ACMs and the CMA awards. But I quite enjoyed the snippets I did see, and then last night I went on the Global TV website here in Canada, which is a Canadian TV station, and they had the syndication rights to the ACM, so they did air them live Wednesday night, but because of that, they now had the entire show posted, and so I watched that entire show, and I have to say, Taylor Swift's performance of Betty was exquisite. It was marvelous. It was just wonderful. That's one of my favorite songs from the new album, and it's awesome to see her back in the country space. And she just has one of the best voices out there, and she writes some of the best songs. But in addition to that, I also really enjoyed Morgan Wallen's performance. He's a fairly new artist. I do understand that he was on the American version of The Voice about 5 or 6 years ago, but they typecast him not in the country genre, and he did want to be in the country genre. So after he got eliminated from that show, he immediately went into country. And, I didn't know that till recently because, he's become huge overnight, and he performed his song Whiskey Glasses on the ACMs, and I'm just in love with his outfit. So he wore what is colloquially called a Canadian tuxedo, denim on denim. So the denim jean jacket, jeans, and then of course the mullet he has sort of made the look. And between his look and his voice, it's just a very fun performance to watch. And I've been enjoying several of his songs. So Whiskey Glasses, to me, that's one of his older ones. But he's had more recently out on the radio More Than My Hometown, which is this sort of sweet but upbeat song about a man who lives in a hometown, and his high school sweetheart is moving away off to the big city, but he's not going to go with her because as much as he loves her, he loves his hometown more, and I sort of like that idea. But it was also great to see Miranda Lambert's performance at the Bluebird Cafe. She sang her song Bluebird, which was a #1 hit recently. And it was interesting too because the Academy of Country Music Awards usually take place, I think, in like Las Vegas or Los Angeles or something. But this year they hosted them in Nashville and three different locations. I think it was the Ryman Auditorium, the Grand Ole Opry, and the Bluebird Cafe. And of course, all those locations are sort of famous in the world of American country music. And I was quite pleased that Carrie Underwood won Entertainer of the Year, finally, even if she had to share the award with Thomas Rhett, who is, he's quite good in his own right, but I was more interested in seeing Carrie Underwood finally win. And Carrie Underwood did this wonderful tribute montage with songs from Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton and Reba McEntire, and I think there was Martina McBride and Tanya Tucker in there as well. And so that was a great performance, and she probably has the best voice in country music at the moment. So that was, that was fun, and that took up a great deal of my time for 2 consecutive nights. So that's why a little less reading this week and a little more watching of TV. But I will leave it there. I did get some fantastic loose leaf tea. I watch Talking Tea with Catherine, a channel here on BookTube, quite a bit, and she is always talking about the wonderful loose leaf teas that she got. And so I was sort of inspired after watching one of her videos where she talked about a tea she was drinking to go out and try something a little new and different. And so I found a brand called the Canadian Tea Company, and quite conveniently, they sell their product on Amazon. Which means I could get it delivered in 2 days. And last night I tried their New York apple spice tea, which absolutely blew my mind because I've never had a tea before with real chunks of dehydrated apple. So I opened the bag and I just smelled like this apple and this cinnamon and spice aroma. And then I made the cup of tea, and I realized that all these little hunks of dehydrated apple had rehydrated, and it was one of the most delicious loose leaf teas I've ever had. This morning I am trying this Arctic raspberry tea, also from the Canadian Tea Company, and I've just had a sip or two here waiting for it to cool down a bit, and it's quite delicious as well. So I hope you're all having a fantastic Friday. I'll talk to you all again soon.